It was upon a damp and melancholy morning in the autumn of the year 1889 that the curious affair of the rusted watch first began. The streets of London were steeped in a thick yellow fog that swirled around the gas lamps and clung to the very bricks of Baker Street as though the city itself sought to conceal its secrets. Within the familiar confines of 221B, however, all was warmth and familiarity. The crackling of a brisk fire upon the hearth, the aroma of strong coffee mingling with the faint chemical tang of Holmes's experiments, and the rustle of newspapers as I occupied myself with the day's reports. My companion sat in his armchair, long limbs draped carelessly yet with a peculiar elegance, his hawk-like profile outlined against the flicker of flame. His eyes were half closed, but I knew from long habit that this state did not indicate slumber. Rather, it was the outward sign of his mind at its most active, weaving unseen deductions from the fragments of knowledge stored in that extraordinary brain. The silence between us was broken only by the soft pop of burning coals until, at length, the steady tread of our landlady was heard upon the stair. Mrs. Hudson's knock preceded the entrance of a visitor whose appearance was striking in the extreme. The gentleman was tall, spare of build, and perhaps in his early 40s. His face bore the pallor of one long deprived of rest, the lines about his mouth speaking of recent anxiety rather than natural age. His attire had once been of excellent quality, yet the polish of his boots had been neglected, and his cravat was tied with a hand that had trembled. What drew my attention most, however, was the small parcel he carried with such care, as though it contained something of great fragility or value. My dear Holmes, here is a gentleman who appears to carry a heavy burden of mind.
Elementary, Watson. The uneven pressure of his footsteps upon the stair told me at once of his internal conflict. He debated even now whether to enter or retreat. A man does not hesitate so unless driven forward by desperate necessity. Permit him a chair, and we shall soon know the rest.
The stranger inclined his head courteously, then sank into the seat I indicated. For a moment he seemed unable to find his voice, and it was only after several rapid breaths that he addressed us.
Mr. Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson, I beg your indulgence. My name is Colonel Percival Harrington, late of Her Majesty's service in India. I fear I intrude upon you at an hour most inconvenient, yet I am compelled by circumstances of the gravest kind. I come to you not merely for advice, but for the very truth itself, for the matter touches my honor, my family, and perhaps even my safety.
Holmes regarded him with that intense, wide gaze which I had come to know well, the gaze that seemed to pierce flesh and bone, digging into the very recesses of a man's soul.
You bring with you a relic. It is there in your hand, wrapped so carefully in cloth. Allow me to suggest that it is a timepiece, a watch belonging not to yourself, but to one recently deceased. It has been handled many times since that death, but not always with reverence.
The man started visibly, his eyes widening.
By heaven, sir, you are correct. This is my brother's watch. My late brother Edward, once a captain in the regiment. He was found lifeless in his chambers only last week. The physicians declared it a matter of heart failure. And yet,
Here his voice faltered. With visible effort, he unwrapped the cloth, revealing a large silver watch whose once bright casing was now pitted with patches of strange reddish rust. Coaches. The chain, too, bore that same unnatural corrosion, as though it had lain for years in damp earth or beneath the salt sea. It is unusual indeed, but surely such oxidation might be explained by exposure to moisture or neglect. A jeweler could restore it with relative ease.
You touch the surface only, my dear Watson. Observe the rust. It follows no natural pattern of uniform decay, but creeps in streaks as though drawn along invisible channels. Such a phenomenon is seldom seen upon silver. The watch does not speak of mere neglect. It speaks of circumstance, dark, singular, and most assuredly human.
that is precisely my fear, Mr. Holmes. For within the case, I discovered markings which I cannot interpret, markings which suggest my brother himself sought to leave some message ere he died. Yet the doctors dismiss the matter, and the authorities care not to listen. I turn therefore to you as my final recourse.
At this he pressed a spring, and the back of the watch opened with a faint click. Inside, scratched with hurried strokes, were several characters. MR74, 19X. The etching was crude, uneven, yet deliberate.
Curious indeed. The hand trembled as of a man in pain or peril, yet the message was too vital to be left unsaid. Colonel, you were close to your brother?
As close as circumstance permitted. Edward was younger than I by 2 years, full of life and vigor in his prime. He served in Calcutta, where rumors spoke of deaths, perhaps even of dubious acquaintances, though nothing ever reached official censure. His return to England was abrupt. He was not the man I remembered from our youth. He looked behind him often as though pursued, and his health declined with alarming swiftness.
And you suspect some agent beyond natural causes?
I do. The very look in his eye in those last weeks convinced me he carried a dreadful secret. His death certificate speaks of the heart, but my own heart tells me otherwise.
Elementary reasoning supports your suspicion. A man hale in youth does not suddenly waste away unless acted upon by some external influence. The watch, his final possession, becomes the silent witness. Consider, Watson, the one object closest to a gentleman's person, drawn daily from his pocket, consulted in every engagement. If in his extremity he chose it as his tablet of farewell, then the symbols must be of supreme importance.
Holmes bent once more over the inscription, his brows knitting with intensity.
MR 7419X. We have here both letters and numerals, perhaps denoting initials, and a date, perhaps something far more subtle. Colonel, did your brother ever speak of an acquaintance bearing those initials? Oh, it did. Iodose. I got.
Not to me, though I cannot pretend to know all the company he kept during his years abroad. I recall, however, that he once muttered the name Rutherford in his sleep. Whether friend or foe, I cannot say.
Might not the figures 7, 4, and 19 indicate regimental designations or even addresses?
Just so, Watson. The possibilities are manifold, but the pattern will emerge. For now, let us accept that the message is deliberate and therefore central to his death.
Holmes rose and began to pace, his long strides betraying his excitement.
Colonel Harrington, your brother's watch is not merely corroded, it is poisoned. The rust suggests chemical agency, not natural decay. To trace the origin of that stain is to uncover the hand behind your brother's death. If you will grant me leave, I shall investigate the matter without delay.
Mr. Holmes, I implore you, whatever the cost, discover for me the truth of Edward's fate. If his honor was stained, I must know it. If foul play robbed him of life, then justice must be served.
With that, the colonel rose, bowed stiffly, and departed, leaving the tarnished watch in Holmes's possession. For some minutes after the door had closed, neither of us spoke. The fog pressed thickly against the panes, and the city's dull roar seemed far away, as though muffled by unseen hands. Holmes, you speak as though certain of foul play. Yet is it wise to oppose the verdict of medical men who saw the body?
My dear Watson, medicine views the stocked heart as the conclusion. I view it as the beginning. The body may lie, but objects seldom do. The corrosion of this watch, the desperate scrawl of a message within, the rapid decline of a vigorous man, all are threads. And when threads exist, a pattern must follow. It is elementary.
Thus began the singular adventure of the rusted watch, whose strange trail was to lead us through fog-shrouded alleys, the hidden records of the East India Company, and ultimately into the darkest chambers of both memory and vengeance. No sooner had Colonel Harrington quitted our chambers than Sherlock Holmes flung himself once more and to his chair, the watch in hand, his eyes glittering with intellectual fire. His long fingers caressed the tarnished case as though it were some priceless relic from antiquity. For my part, I confess I felt a thrill of anticipation. Too well did I know that look upon his countenance, the prelude to some intricate pursuit that would draw us both into strange waters. Holmes, I cannot but wonder whether we embark upon a phantom chase. A rusted watch, a few crude scratches, and the grief of a bereaved man, are these sufficient foundation for your confidence of foul play?
My dear Watson, it is the trifles, always the trifles, that reveal the greater truth. Consider, natural rust spreads uniformly, Yet here it forms streaks, as though guided by some fluid channel. Why upon silver? Why upon this particular chain? Add to this the desperate scrawl of letters and figures. M.R. 7419X. Do you not perceive that here lies the dying declaration of a man who knew his end was not of nature's hand?
You speak persuasively, though I confess the cipher remains obscure.
Obscure, yes, but not impenetrable. The first step is always to examine the instrument itself. Where better than with a watchmaker, a skilled artificer, may read in the wear of a case what a physician discerns in the pallor of skin.
Holmes rose, snatched his greatcoat and deerstalker from the stand, and beckoned me with that impatient gesture which brooked no delay. Moments later, we were swallowed by the murk of Baker Street, the lamps dimmed by fog until they glowed like will-o'-the-wisps, midges. The rattle of hansom cabs, the cries of vendors, the tramp of boots, all were muffled beneath the heavy autumn mist as we set off toward Clerkenwell, where Holmes declared the finest watchmakers of London still plied their trade. We entered a narrow street where the air rang with the delicate chiming of innumerable clocks. Cullinan, the shop before which Holmes halted, bore upon its window a gilded sign, Hargreaves and Son, horologists. Within, rows of gleaming timepieces ticked solemnly, their steady rhythm forming a strange orchestra of measured seconds. An elderly man with magnifying spectacles peered up from his bench as we entered.
Mr. Hargreaves, I believe, my name is Sherlock Holmes. I should esteem it a favor if you would examine this watch and provide me your professional judgment.
Sir, it would be my pleasure. Pray allow me to adjust my lens. Ah! A fine piece, once, though sorely abused. Silver, continental make, mid-century at a glance. But what is this? Rust upon silver? Most extraordinary.
Do you find it as unusual as we did then?
Indeed, sir. Silver does not rust as iron does. What you see here is the intrusion of some corrosive agent, perhaps acid vapors or chemical effluent. It has eaten into the very pores of the metal. See how it streaks? As though the watch had lain amidst chemical fumes for days.
Precisely. And what of the mechanism within?
Permit me to open the works. There, the interior is sound, save for faint discoloration. This is no mere neglect, sir. It is contamination. I should say the watch has dwelt in proximity to certain industrial substances, sulfuric perhaps or nitric. It is, if I may be so bold, a very unwholesome environment for a gentleman's timepiece.
You speak truly, Mr. Hargreaves. Might you also remark upon these characters within the lid?
Emma, 7419X, scratched by a shaky hand. Not the work of any craftsman. A message, perhaps. Alas, beyond my poor powers to decipher.
You have told me more than enough. I thank you for your candor.
With that, Holmes pressed a sovereign into the watchmaker's reluctant palm and swept me back into the street. Cause his stride was swift, his manner animated. Well, Holmes, what do you infer from the good man's observations?
Elementary, Watson. The watch was not corroded by water or time, but by chemicals of industrial potency. Where does one encounter such vapors? In laboratories, certainly, in factories, assuredly, but also in places less expected, apothecaries, dye houses, even the storerooms of the East India Company, where exotic substances are warehoused.
You think, then, that Captain Harrington's death is linked to such environments?
I think more, that the watch itself was exposed at the very moment of its owner's extremity. He had but seconds to scratch a message, and his failing hand chose that surface. Thus, the corrosion and the inscription are bound together. If we can trace one, we shall understand the other.
We had not gone 10 paces before Holmes halted abruptly, his gaze fixed upon a ragged boy who leaned idly against a lamppost. The lad straightened as Holmes beckoned.
Wiggins, my sharp-eyed friend, what fortune to encounter you upon your rounds.
Always glad to serve, Mr. Holmes. Got a job for us, sir?
Indeed. You will set your band to discover all you may of a man named Rutherford, likely connected with the Harrington family or their regiment. MR are the initials. Bring me word by nightfall.
Consider it done, governor. We knows how to nose about.
The lad vanished into the fog as suddenly as he had appeared. Holmes, you astonish me. You leap from a scratched initial to a name. How so?
Did you not hear the colonel speak of a muttered Rutherford in his brother's sleep? Combine that recollection with the letters M.R. and you have Major Rutherford, a man of military station, I suspect, and one who played some role in Captain Harrington's demise.
Yet the numbers 74 and 19?
Numbers, Watson, are ever the more treacherous. They may denote a regiment, a cipher, a year, or an address. For now, let us treat them as the scaffolding upon which the edifice of truth shall be built.
He returned to Baker Street, where Holmes threw himself into a frenzy of activity. He spread before him regimental directories, gazetteers, and even shipping lists. For hours, the room was filled with the rustle of pages, the scratch of his pen, and the occasional exclamation of discovery. I busied myself with notes, though I confess much of his rapid reasoning escaped me. At length, he threw down his quill with a triumphant smile.
Watson, we have it. The 74th Regiment of Foot, long stationed in India, lists among its officers 1. Major Alistair Rutherford, retired 2 years past, yet still resident in London. The coincidence is too perfect. M.R. 74. It can only point to him.
And the 19X?
A puzzle yet, but no less solvable. Consider, X may denote a Roman numeral. 10. Impossible. The year is yet to come. Perhaps 19 cross, 19 execution, or 19 followed by an unknown. We shall hold it in abeyance. The vital fact is Rutherford. We must find him.
Evening had fallen when Wiggins returned with his report.
Major Rutherford, sir, lodges in Bloomsbury, a quiet sort of gent, but keeps odd company. Seen him meeting men from the docks, foreign-looking chaps. There's whispers he dabbles in trade. What ain't entirely honest.
Excellent, Wiggins. Here is your reward. Keep eyes upon him and bring me word of any fresh movement. My doge.
After the boy's departure, if you annunciate, Holmes turned to me with that gleam I had learned to dread and yet secretly relish.
Watson, the game is afoot. Tomorrow we shall pay a call upon Major Rutherford. Tonight, however, we must study every scrap of record that bears his name. For in this man, I am persuaded, lies the secret of the rusted watch and the untimely death of Captain Harrington.
And so the long night passed with maps and ledgers spread across the table, while the fog pressed against our windows like some phantom host. Little did I know that the morrow would draw us into peril more grave than any we had yet encountered. Morning broke with a pale and watery sun that struggled against the fog. Holmes, who had scarcely slept, greeted me with an eagerness bordering on impatience. His eyes gleamed with the anticipation of pursuit, and his whole manner suggested that the day held promise of revelation. After a hasty breakfast, we hailed a cab and directed the driver toward Bloomsbury, where Major Alistair Rutherford was said to reside. The neighborhood into which we were carried was respectable, though somewhat faded, a district of lodging houses and modest townhomes that had seen better days. Narrow streets stretched between tall, soot-stained buildings, while here and there small squares with railings and plane trees provided relief from the monotony. It was upon such a square that Holmes instructed our driver to stop.
Observe, Watson, number 17, the house with the green shutters. The curtains are drawn, though the hour is already late morning. That is Major Rutherford's lodging.
You had the appearance of a hawk poised above its prey. But tell me, Holmes, how shall we approach this major? Do we knock boldly at his door and proclaim our errand?
Boldness, my dear Watson, is often the surest disguise. Yet we shall proceed with caution. I propose first to reconnoitre. Come, let us stroll the square and take our bearings.
We walked slowly, affecting the air of gentlemen out for a morning's exercise, while Holmes's eyes darted from window to window with that restless scrutiny which seemed to penetrate stone and mortar. Twice he paused to examine faint marks upon the pavement, and once he stooped to pluck a scrap of paper from the gutter.
Elementary. This fragment once formed part of a shipping manifest. See here, the stamp of the East India Company. And what name is this scrawled upon the margin? Edward Harrington.
By heavens, Holmes, then the captain was engaged in some transaction with Rutherford involving the company's trade.
Precisely. And where commerce goes astray, crime is seldom far behind.
At that moment, the green shuttered door opened and a man stepped forth. He was tall, broad of shoulder, with a moustache that bristled like a sergeant major's. His gait was firm, yet his eyes shifted from side to side in a manner that betrayed unease. Holmes nudged me slightly.
Our Quaddy, Watson. Mark him well. The very cut of his whiskers proclaims him soldier. Let us follow discreetly.
Rutherford strode down the street and turned into a thoroughfare leading toward the markets. Lee maintained a careful distance, mingling with the crowd. More than once, Holmes feigned to halt and inspect a shop window, so that our pursuit appeared accidental. The Major eventually entered a public house of mean aspect, its signboard creaking in the chill wind. Holmes drew me aside into a doorway opposite. You propose to wait here until he emerges?
Not so. We shall follow him within. Such haunts conceal more truths than drawing rooms. Keep your eyes open, and above all, betray no recognition.
Together we entered the tavern, a dim establishment reeking of stale ale and tobacco. The clientele were rough fellows, sailors, porters, and men of dubious profession. Yet none took particular notice of us. Choice. Rutherford sat at a corner table conversing with a swarthy man whose accent, when he spoke, betrayed Mediterranean origins. Ayanyani. We secured a table nearby, and though the din was considerable, Holmes's acute ear lost not a syllable.
The cargo must be moved by week's end. Delay will draw suspicion.
Fear not, Major. My associates are ready. The goods are safe, though they burn the air with their smell.
Keep them well covered. We cannot afford another mishap, such as befell Harrington.
I started at the mention of the name, but Holmes pressed his boot lightly against my own, boding silence.
Harrington was weak. He lacked the courage for our enterprise. Let his fate serve as warning. More ammunition.
Enough. Speak no more of it. Finish your drink and depart separately.
The two men soon parted company, Radamer vanishing into the press of the market, while Rutherford quitted by the side door. Holmes and I exchanged glances, heavy with significance. Holmes, did you hear? They spoke of Harrington and of goods that burned the air. Surely this confirms foul play.
It is elementary, Watson. The goods are chemical in nature, substances capable of corroding silver, such as we observed upon the watch. Harrington, unwilling to proceed, met with a fate contrived to silence him.
And the watch?
He inscribed his final clue, even as the poison worked upon him, striving to expose Rutherford's guilt.
Holmes rose, his expression resolute. Acid.
Our next step is to penetrate Rutherford's lodging. Within those shuttered rooms lie the papers that will complete the story. Tonight, under cover of darkness, we shall make the attempt.
That evening, after an early supper, we set forth once more, our figures muffled in cloaks against the fog. The square was deserted, the street lamps glowing dimly through the haze. Holmes carried his lockpicks concealed in his pocket, and his eyes shone with anticipation. Holmes, do you not fear discovery?
Discovery is the hazard of every enterprise, but fortune favors the prepared. Keep watch while I attend to the lock.
With deft fingers, he coaxed the latch, and in moments the door yielded silently. We slipped within. The passage smelled faintly of sulphur, and the air was thick with chemical odors. Holmes drew a lantern from his coat and shaded its light. Together we ascended the stair and entered the Major's chamber. The room was sparely furnished, yet upon the desk lay a quantity of papers and ledgers. Holmes pounced upon them eagerly.
Just as I surmised. Shipping manifests, correspondence with foreign agents, and here, recipes for compounds of a dangerous sort. See, Watson, nitric acid, mercury salts, arsenic. These are no wares for honest trade.
Then Rutherford is engaged in smuggling poisons?
More, he traffics in death itself. And look, this ledger entry marked Harrington with a note refused to be dealt with. Elementary indeed.
Even as he spoke, a sound reached us from the stair, a heavy tread ascending. Holmes extinguished the lantern.
Quick, Watson, behind the curtain.
We concealed ourselves as the door opened and Rutherford entered, carrying a small case. He set it upon the desk, opened it, and removed a vial that glowed faintly even in the dim light.
Cussed stuff. Burns the very air. If the customs men knew, we'd all swing.
He locked the vial within a cabinet, muttered to himself, and departed once more.
You perceive, Watson, Harrington's watch was corroded by precisely such a substance. He must have carried it in his pocket when exposed. The dying man scratched his warning before the poison consumed him.
When our course is clear, we must inform Colonel Harrington and the authorities at once.
Not yet. To accuse is not to prove. We must secure evidence beyond denial. Tomorrow we shall return in daylight under pretense of inquiry. For now, let us depart ere Rutherford returns.
We quitted the house as stealthily as we had entered, and once safe upon the street, I breathed more freely. Holmes's face was grave, yet exultant.
The shadows of Bloomsbury hide a serpent, Watson, but we have glimpsed its coils. Soon enough we shall strike at the head.
Thus ended our night's adventure, yet sleep came not easily to me. For the image of that glowing vial haunted my thoughts. What deadly purpose could it serve, and what peril lay yet ahead? The morning following our midnight intrusion into Major Rutherford's rooms dawned grey and cold, foggier, with a wind that carried dampness from the river. I found Holmes already awake, seated at the breakfast table with papers spread before him and a half-eaten slice of toast forgotten at his elbow. George, his features, sharpened by sleeplessness, were illuminated by the gleam of certainty.
Watson, the threads tighten. Rutherford is no mere smuggler. He is the linchpin of a network trafficking in chemical agents of the most pernicious character. Such compounds, when inhaled or handled without care, corrode silver and burn the flesh. Harrington, I am persuaded, stumbled upon Rutherford's scheme, recoiled in horror, and paid with his life.
Then surely, Holmes, we have but to present the ledger we saw, the vial, and the manifest, with Harrington's name. That would suffice for the magistrate.
Ah, but therein lies the difficulty. We glimpsed them only by stealth, and without lawful possession such evidence dissolves in court. The law requires proof obtained above board. We must obtain testimony, living testimony.
Before I could reply, a knock sounded at our door. Mrs. Das. Hudson ushered in none other than Colonel Harrington. His appearance was altered since his first visit. The haggard look remained, but now it was mingled with stern resolve.
Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, I crave your attention once more. Last night, I received a packet of papers delivered anonymously. Their contents shocked me to the core. I thought it best to bring them straightway into your keeping.
He laid upon the table several folded sheets tied with string. Holmes untied them with eager fingers.
Excellent. A letter addressed to Captain Harrington in Rutherford's hand. Let us read, Edward. You must not falter. The consignment is worth fortunes. Should you betray us, you seal your own fate. Watson, do you see? Here is motive and menace entwined.
It is damning indeed. But who could have sent these to the colonel?
That, gentlemen, is what puzzles me. The packet bore no mark save my name, scrawled roughly. Yet within, I also found this.
And his papyrus code. From his coat he produced a small photograph, worn and creased. It depicted two young officers standing side by side in tropical uniform, smiling at the camera. On the back was written, Harrington and Rutherford, Calcutta, 1874.
The very year of the inscription, MR 74, elementary. Harrington's dying hand recalled this photograph. The year of their camaraderie turned to treachery. He meant us to seek Rutherford by that link.
Then my brother foresaw his peril and sought to denounce his betrayer even as he perished.
Yet what of the 19X?
Still a puzzle. Perhaps 19 crates, shipment X, or the 19th of a month marked with an X in Rutherford's papers. I shall not rest until it is clear.
Holmes paced the room in agitation, the papers fluttering in his hand.
Colonel, you must prepare yourself. The foe we face is cunning and ruthless. He will not hesitate to silence those who threaten him. Your brother died by his hand. You yourself may be in danger.
Danger I do not fear. What I demand is justice. Tell me, Mr. Holmes, what must be done?
We require corroboration. You must confront Rutherford not with accusation, but with memory. You knew him in India. Appeal to that bond, draw him into confession. Meanwhile, Watson and I shall observe unseen. If he betrays himself, we will strike.
The colonel's jaw tightened, yet he nodded. The plan was set. That very afternoon, we made our way once more to Bloomsbury. Rutherford was at home, his door answered by a surly servant who admitted the colonel without question. Holmes and I, by prior arrangement, gained entrance through a side passage and concealed ourselves behind a screen in the adjoining room. Through the thin partition, we heard the murmur of voices as Colonel Harrington confronted his old married, huh?
Alistair, it grieves me to see how far you have strayed. Edward trusted you as brother, yet he lies cold in his grave. I must know the truth. What hand guided his death?
Truth, Percival? You come here spouting truth, yet you know nothing. Edward was weak, unfit for the burdens we bore. He wavered, and in wavering, doomed himself.
You admit then that his end was not natural?
I admit nothing, but mark me, meddle further and you may share his fate.
At this, Holmes touched my arm, his eyes alight with grim triumph.
Did you hear, Watson? A veiled threat is confession's twin. But let us hear more.
I will not be cowed, Alistair. I have here letters in your hand, warning Edward of the very peril that consumed him. Explain these, or I shall place them before the magistrate.
After a pause, voice low, then so be it. Yes, I wrote them. Yes, I sought to bind him to our cause. And yes, when he faltered, the others decreed he must be silenced. Oh, do you think I could defy them? The cargo is worth empires, Percival. With it we hold the East in our grasp.
Better poverty than guilt, sir. You have confessed enough to damn you.
Rutherford's chair scraped sharply. There was the ring of steel as he drew a revolver. Holmes sprang from hiding.
Drop the weapon, Rutherford. The game is over.
The major wheeled in astonishment, but Holmes's revolver was already trained upon him, and I too had mine in hand. For a moment the air was thick with peril. Then, with a curse, Rutherford flung his pistol to the floor.
You think you have won, Holmes? You have nothing but words. Where is your proof? Without it, the law cannot touch me.
Proof enough lies in your ledgers, your vials, your own lips, which have spoken too freely. But beyond that, I know the meaning of 19X. It is the mark upon your shipping crates. 19 boxes consigned under false manifest, each filled with the devil's compound. One shipment is due to depart this very week from the docks. Am I wrong?
Staggering back, how could you know?
Elementary.
Rutherford's defiance crumbled. He sank into his chair, head in hands.
Curse you, Holmes. You and your cursed deductions. Very well, take me if you will, but others remain who will not be so easily crushed.
The neck tightens for them as well. Scotland Yard shall see to that.
Colonel Harrington's face was pale, but his eyes shone with fierce satisfaction.
My brother is avenged. That is enough.
At Holmes's signal, I fetched Inspector Lestrade, who had been stationed discreetly nearby in case of trouble. Rutherford was placed under arrest, his room searched, and the incriminating plates seized at the docks before they could be dispatched. The scheme was thus laid bare, a conspiracy of smugglers dealing in deadly chemicals, with Major Rutherford at its heart. That evening, as the fog once more enveloped Baker Street, Holmes and I sat before the fire, just reviewing the day's events. Holmes, your genius once again has brought light into darkness. Yet I cannot but pity the colonel, for though justice is served, his heart must ache.
True, Watson. No victory is unalloyed where honor and friendship are betrayed. But remember, the dying hand of Edward Harrington scrawled those final symbols upon his watch. By that act, he guided us to the truth. His voice, though stilled, was not silent.
Holmes held the rusted watch in his hand, gazing upon it with solemn reverence.
It is an elementary truth, Watson. that the smallest object may speak more loudly than the grandest oration. This rusted watch was the very witness that neither death nor deception could silence.
Thus did the case appear concluded, yet in my heart I felt the shadows had not fully lifted, for Rutherford's words rang ominously. Others remain who will not be so easily crushed. Little did I know how prophetic those words would prove, and how the rusted watch still held secrets not yet revealed. In the days following Major Rutherford's arrest, London seemed to breathe easier. Newspapers carried word of the smuggling ring crushed by the diligence of Scotland Yard, though, as is often the case, the name of Sherlock Holmes was absent, eclipsed by official glory. Holmes bore this with his customary indifference, only smiling thinly when I grew indignant on his behalf. Holmes, it is monstrous. The inspector takes the laurels while you remain a mere footnote.
My dear Watson, the satisfaction of having disentangled truth from falsehood is its own reward. Let Lestrade brandish his feathers. The peacock's pride sustains him, while I am content with the chase itself.
Yet even as Holmes spoke thus, I perceived in his restless manner that his mind was not wholly at peace. He examined again and again the rusted watch, turning it beneath the lamplight as though its worn casing concealed a mystery still unresolved. Surely, Holmes, the case is finished. Some Puradaris are satisfied, Rutherford awaits trial, and the contraband is seized. What more can this battered timepiece conceal?
Ah, Watson, you touch the very point. Why did Harrington inscribe not only MR74 but also 19X? We assumed it referred to crates of chemical cargo, and indeed that fitted admirably. But the symbol persists in my mind, like a tune half remembered. It whispers of something more, something Edward Harrington sought desperately to impart. Until I know, I cannot rest.
That very evening, Colonel Harrington returned to Baker Street. His face bore fresh strain, as though the wound of betrayal by his old comrade deepened with each reflection.
Gentlemen, I am in your debt beyond words. Yet I come with tidings that disturb me. Rutherford has been remanded in custody, yet there are whispers among his fellows. Some claim he carried a key, a cipher, which if lost imperils them all. They search for it, Watson. Search as hounds upon the scent.
A cipher, you say? And where did Rutherford keep it?
None can say. But I fear it may concern the very watch you hold. For twice now my residence has been entered and my drawers ransacked, though nothing was taken. They sought, perhaps, what Edward left in my care.
At this, Holmes's eyes gleamed with sudden fire. He seized the watch, drew his glass, and bent over it intently.
Elementary, how blind we have been. Observe, Watson, beneath the rust along the rim, there lies a faint seam, a groove too precise to be accidental. This is no ordinary watch, it is a casket.
With delicate pressure of his blade, Holmes prized the casing apart. From within the hollow back emerged a folded scrap of vellum, so tightly compressed that only long confinement could explain its shape. He spread it carefully upon the table.
Behold, a cipher indeed.
The shape bore columns of numbers arranged in irregular order, punctuated here and there by the symbol X. By Jove, Holmes, what can it mean?
A numerical cipher, elementary in conception, yet doubtless guarding matters of grave importance. Note how 19 recurs, often beside the X. Harrington must have intended us to unravel this. Colonel, does the figure 19 signify aught to you?
In our regiment, the 19th was the day appointed for dispatch of reports. Edward, ever punctilious, would have associated it with duty, but beyond that I know nothing.
Then allow me a few moments.
I watched as Holmes's eyes flickered swiftly across the page, his fingers tapping upon the arm of his chair. At length he uttered a cry of satisfaction.
As I suspected, it is a book cipher, employing the regimental history of the 74th Bengal Infantry. See here, Colonel, the volume upon your brother's shelf. Each number refers to page and word. The letter X denotes a change of line. Allow me to demonstrate.
With astonishing rapidity, he set to work, transcribing letters from book to paper. Lowly words took form until at last the message stood revealed. Rutherford conspires with foreign agents. Shipment through Dover. Beware traitor within ranks. Trust only Percival.
Merciful heavens! Then Edward sought not only to accuse Rutherford, but to warn me of a wider treachery. A traitor within our ranks, even now?
Precisely. Rutherford was but one head of the Hydra. His arrest may rouse the others to desperate action. We must act with speed.
At that moment, a knock came upon our door. To our astonishment, it was Inspector Lestrade himself.
Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, Colonel, pardon my intrusion, but grave news compels me. Rutherford has escaped custody. His gaolers were overcome by ruffians, and he has vanished into the night.
Escaped? Then London is in peril once more.
Calm yourself, Colonel. His flight only hastens his ruin. He will make for Dover to rejoin his confederates and the cargo still at large. We must forestall him this very night.
Thus it was that, scarcely an hour later, Doby Singly, an hour later, Yobi Singh Guing Fomens, adding Guin Sing Kines, offing Kines Homens Menizelize Twitches. We found ourselves upon the midnight train racing towards the coast, Holmes silent and intent, the colonel rigid with determination, and Lestrade fidgeting with nervous energy. The storm raged outside, sheets of rain lashing the windows as though nature herself sought to impede our mission. At Dover, we hastened to the docks, where lanterns gleamed fitfully in the gale. Holmes led us with unerring certainty to a warehouse at the far end of the quay. From within came muffled voices and the scrape of crates upon the floor.
Quiet now. The net closes.
Peering through a crack, we beheld Rutherford himself directing a knot of sailors as they loaded heavy boxes marked with the telltale sign 19X.
There he is, the villain himself.
Patience, Colonel. We must catch not only the serpent, but its brood.
Holmes signaled Lestrade, who had brought a squad of constables. With a sudden crash, the doors were thrown wide and the law descended upon the conspirators. They sprang out, cries of alarm filled the air. Rutherford, wild-eyed and desperate, seized the lantern and hurled it upon the crates. At once, flames leapt high, threatening to consume all. Holmes, the fire will ignite the chemicals.
Then we must quell it at once, or half Dover may perish.
In the chaos, Rutherford attempted to flee, but the colonel confronted him, barring his path.
You shall not escape justice again, Alistair.
Stand aside, Percival, or join your brother in debt.
With a sudden lunge, he raised the knife, but the colonel parried, and in the struggle, Rutherford stumbled into the very flames he had kindled. With a terrible cry, he fell, and the fire consumed him. It was over. The crates were dragged from the blaze and doused before disaster could spread. Within were found vials of the same corrosive substance destined for sale to agents of a foreign power. The conspiracy was shattered utterly, its leader destroyed by his own hand. Back in Baker Street some days later, Holmes and I sat in reflective silence. The colonel, his honor restored, had departed for his estate, carrying his brother's watch as a relic sacred beyond price. Lestrade for once had acknowledged Holmes's genius with open gratitude, though he still strutted for the newspapers. So ends the affair of the rusted watch, Holmes. What think you now of Harrington's final message?
It was the voice of a dying man, Watson, yet more eloquent than any living witness. His rusted watch carried the seed of truth across the gulf of death. Elementary though the deductions may appear in hindsight, they required but one thing: the will to listen to the silent testimony of things.
And so, justice is done, though at terrible cost.
Justice, yes, but remember, my friend, that the world ever abounds with shadows. We dispel them one case at a time, yet the night remains.
Thus spoke Sherlock Holmes, enamored Biswater and I could not but marvel once again at the strange fate that bound me to his side, the chronicler of his triumphs, the witness of his genius, and the friend of a man whose mind illuminated even the darkest mystery. And so I set down this account, that posterity may know how a simple rusted watch unmasked conspiracy, treachery, and murder, and how once more the unerring deductions of Sherlock Holmes brought justice to the troubled streets of London